Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we're releasing a bonus episode. This is my recent appearance on the Low Carb Hussle Podcast with Nate Palmer. This interview was split into two episodes. The first was episode 142, titled How to Burn More Calories from Fat, and the second was episode 143, titled How to Make Carnivore Work for Your Life. You may remember Nate from our show. We've hosted him twice. First one on episode 160, and more recently on episode 385, so be sure to go check those out. I really have enjoyed those. I've always enjoyed listening to stories from some of my favorite podcast hosts, which is part of the reason why I make these interviews into a bonus episode here. And if for no other reason, all of these hosts are asking me different questions where I'm able to give more unique answers. So I really hope that you enjoy these episodes, and I hope you take something out of this one. Since this was two episodes, I've spliced them all into one episode here. Nate is an awesome guy. I highly recommend you following him on Instagram. If for no other reason, to watch his hilarious low-carb game show. He interviews random people on the street to quiz them about oftentimes things that are not even related to low carbohydrate for $1. It's very funny. It's one of my favorite parts of the internet for sure. So be sure to follow him on Instagram. And as always, be sure to go over to Apple, follow the Low Carb Hussle Podcast. Be sure to leave Nate a rating and review. And without further ado, here is my recent appearance on the Low Carb Hussle Podcast.
Are you interested in being able to burn more calories, specifically more calories from fat, without crashing your metabolism and having negative repercussions long-term, like the people we see on The Biggest Loser who are always regaining their weight? On this episode, we're joined by Casey Ruff. He runs the Boundless Body Radio, which is awesome. He's been a personal trainer and in coaching now for almost 16 years. And we dive into his experience with a lot of testing of athletes and testing the metabolic rates before and after different workout protocols and nutrition protocols. And Casey really clears up a lot of different things that I'd had questions about, and I know most of us do. So if you're interested in getting in great shape without crashing metabolism or losing your ability to burn fat long-term, you're going to want to check this episode out. You're listening to the Low Carb Hustle, helping you get leaner, live longer, and be legendary. My name is Nate Palmer. I've been a coach since 2008, and I helped over 1,100 people transform their bodies. My mission is simple: to make it easy for you to drop fat and wake up for the rest of your life feeling lean, strong, and energetic. So if you're ready to learn how to increase your metabolic rate and burn more calories from fat, stick around. Let's do this. Are you tired of those 30 to 40 pounds that every time you take your shirt off, you think, I'm going to lose it this year? Well, let's get together and put something in place so that you're not having this conversation in your head in 11 months. That way, next December, you're not thinking, 2024, that's going to be my year. Let's make 2023 your year. Go to nate.fit to find out how you can join the $1 Million Body Mastermind for just $1 for the first 2 weeks. What's up, Casey? Welcome back to the Low Carb Hustle. I'm so glad you're here, man. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you so very much, Nate. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, dude. So for those of us who don't necessarily know your history and your backstory, your history with Boundless Body Radio, you've been in the industry, personal training and fitness for 15 years. But can you give us just kind of like the 60-second rundown on who you are, what you do, and talk a little bit about the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a personal trainer, like you said, since March of 2007. So just over 15 years. Been a nutrition coach for the last 5 or 6 years. I found low carbohydrate diets through using metabolic carts. So measuring people's metabolic rates, not only resting, but also as they were exercising, doing like VO2 max tests. And Boundless Body is a company that my wife and I started during the pandemic. It was July of 2020 when, everything was kind of shut down. And we decided that to continue our business, training our people, since our gym kind of put us on unemployment, we decided to start our own business and train our people that we had been training before and continue with our nutrition coaching. We built out our basement to be a personal training studio and Pilates studio. And the podcast, Boundless Body Radio, was started in October of 2020. We do releases every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We've done that for the last 2+ years, and it's been an amazing journey. It's been really awesome to chat with some of the people that you and I, know and love and respect, and have some amazing conversations. So it's been fantastic.
That's awesome. So you started your podcast in 2020, and you've put out 376 episodes as of the time we're recording this one. That's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a lot of work and it's a bit of a blur, but yeah, like I said, when you're having a lot of fun with awesome people and asking them great questions and getting great answers, it's amazing. I have to pinch myself all the time.
I know it's super cool to be able to talk to some people who are just experts in their industry who I feel like, we've looked up to, we've read their stuff for so long, followed them, and amazing to get to interview them. But besides getting those opportunities of like learning new information directly from the source, what have been some of those like key things about podcasting that you didn't expect to be awesome? Like, what have you enjoyed about it? You're like, oh, I didn't even see this coming.
That's a really great question. You made a really good point. It's really fun to interview people who are the giants in the field of low carbohydrate space. So Belinda Fettke and Nina Teicholz and Dr. Bill Schindler and Ben Beckman and like all these amazing people, experts in their field. It's also been really fun and unexpected to discover other people who are out there who may not have the same reach and they might not have the same huge audience, but there's so many people out there that are doing great work. They're learning things maybe for the first time, in the last few months or the last year, and they're just getting started in their journeys and they're doing really good work. And it's been equally fun to interview the experts, but it's also been fun to try to discover people who are on the up and up and who are just trying to do good work and trying to ask honest questions. I love finding those people and helping them tell their story as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's fun to just find those person who maybe haven't been interviewed on a lot of podcasts, or because I know like a lot of times people will put out a book and then they'll give the same podcast interview like 4 or 5 months in a row. And so you can hear the same thing.
Totally.
But I've really enjoyed, like I've done a couple of interviews with people who have formulated different supplements. I've done a couple of like doctors. I did one with this girl named the ex-plant eater who went from a vegan lifestyle to a carnivore lifestyle.
Yeah.
And just like such interesting perspective. So yeah, I 100% agree with you on that.
And they're so excited. That's the thing, is like the person who just wrote the book, like they did 10 of those same episodes like yesterday, today. Like they do that interview all the time, like you said, where somebody else who's just kind of getting into this world, there's going to be so excited to share their message, whatever that message is. And I think we all have a role in this. Again, it might not be that we're changing the entire world or changing the planet or whatever, but we're sharing our message and people are listening. And if you're out there and you don't think you have an audience, you absolutely do. And you have a voice and your message is important and you should share it however you can.
Absolutely. And I love that about what you and your wife do, is that you don't necessarily come down and be like, hey, you should do this. You share like, hey, this is what we've been doing. This is what's been working for us. And it's just very relatable. So I agree with you. And I love that about what you guys do as well.
Well, thank you very much. That's really high praise coming from you.
So kind of like going down that rabbit hole even further, what are some things that you believed in 2007, 8, 9, 10, coming like as a newly minted personal trainer? You're very excited, right? That you look back and you just cringe at. What are the things that have you changed your mind about in the 15 years you've been doing this?
Dude, wasn't that day the best? Like the very first day that you got your personal training certification and you were like, dude, I know how everybody should squat. I know exactly what program everybody needs to be on. You knew it all.
Oh yeah, I was so smart. I'm way dumber now.
It was amazing. Yeah, I'm way dumber now for sure. Yeah, I mean, if I were to say, on the exercise part of things as far as personal training goes, I do a lot less of the functional kind of training that I used to do. My personal training certification behind me says that, if you want to be a good hockey player, you should go to a gym and do movements that look like hockey and, you jump around like you're skating. And if you're a basketball player, you should jump and throw like a heavy ball against a wall like a chest press. And, as time has gone on, I do less and less of that kind of functional training and do more of the type of training that's described in the Body by Science book that was written by John Little and Dr. Doug McGuff, where they use the gym to really build strength and do sets that go all the way to muscular failure and keep the gym as kind of like, this is your minimal effective dosage to maintain your strength, to build muscle, to be very strong. And then I usually want my people to do whatever we have to do in the gym and then go outside and do whatever their sport is in the context of their sport. So rather than doing things that look like ice hockey in a gym, go play ice hockey, go actually be skating on ice with your equipment, with your buddies who are talking smack. Like throwing a 10-pound medicine ball against a wall to me it's not really basketball. I'd rather have somebody play basketball in the context that basketball is played in and us using the gym to really develop strength and muscle. So that's one thing that's probably really changed.
Yeah, it's like foundation building in the gym. It's like you're using that as a way to like build that muscle, increase your metabolic rate, like build up your tendons, joints, and ligaments, decrease rate of injury, that sort of thing. So I completely agree with you because I started in 2008, you started in 2007. So I was heavily influenced by CrossFit and metabolic conditioning. And I thought everybody needs to be busting their ass 100% of the time. And if you're not dead at the end of a session, you probably didn't get a very good workout. Now people have finished their workouts and are like, that was it. And I'm like, yeah, just wait a day or two. Because we're only doing maybe one working set of like, and kind of 3 or 4 ramp up sets, and they're getting way better results. Yeah, but I had a client the same thing. He's like, I want to run a marathon. What should I do? Should I be doing some plyos? Can you give me some of these other things? I'm like, hey, we're just going to reinforce some of like the ankle and knee stability things that we've already been doing. We're going to work really hard on your core and your breathing patterns. I'm not going to have you doing a bunch of plyometrics or jumps or different like quote unquote athletic-y type movements that look cool in Men's Health magazine, not necessarily serving you or giving you that foundation that you need to be successful at your sport.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think if you're a personal trainer that's been in the industry as long as you and I have, you have to understand that the priority of keeping people healthy and keeping them, preventing injuries is so high up on the priority list. It's not only just for, doing the right thing by your client, it's also for the personal trainer's business. Like if I hurt you, that's not good for my business, let alone it's not good for you and you're not going to rehire me. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you 100%. I think doing the right thing and keeping people safe in the gym is so important. And you mentioned something really interesting, which is metabolic rate. And this is where I really had an amazing experience in my career with the gym that I was working on, where I was able to use that metabolic rate. That was my whole career, was using that metabolic cart to validate how somebody is metabolizing their calories. And yeah, like when we talk about calories in and calories out being important, I'm not going to disagree with that. I do think that's really important. I just think we look at it backwards. Like, I don't care if somebody is eating less calories and then they burn 500 calories on a workout. What I want to do is do exactly what you mentioned. I want to bring your metabolic rate up. What if I can make Nate burn 500 calories more every single day, just being Nate and being awesome and kicking ass and hosting an awesome podcast and doing nothing else? Like, there's so much more value in having people have good metabolic rates that is always working for them. It's more like, investing your money versus just spending your money. There's such a difference there. And I think that's really important to understand.
I like the analogy of doing like a cardio workout is like going to the arcade. You put your quarters in, you play Street Fighter, you got Blanca, you almost win, you got to go away. Okay. So it's like, it's cheap, but you got to go back every single time. Like, investing in weight training is like buying a PS5. You have it at your house. It's more expensive. It takes more, but then you have access to it all the time. Same thing. You have those muscles, you built your metabolic rate. Now you're burning 300, 500 calories extra per day. You don't have to go do those workouts anymore and put in that time and go to the arcade and spend those quarters. You've already put in that big investment. I love what you just said there. Can you dive a bit further into, because you said metabolic cart. I don't really understand what that is. And can you tell me how that informed your ideological change to being more low carb?
Yes, absolutely. Metabolic cart is a piece of equipment that basically is attached to a cable that is hooked up to somebody that is wearing a mask. So think about like a VO2 max test. If you've seen pictures,
is it the same thing as the VO2 max test?
It's the same thing. I've heard you talk about, the Biggest Loser contestants and how, we've measured their metabolic rates, and we followed up 6 years later with them in 2016 and validated that their metabolic rates were suppressed even after so long after doing the contest. And most of them gained a huge amount of their weight back, right?
It's like 99% or something like that.
It was really high. It was really bad. And a metabolic cart is what they use to validate that kind of thing. So if I can measure your breathing, the volume of the air that's coming in and out of your body is a really good proxy for how many calories your body's burning.
Is it primarily volume, or are you checking carbon dioxide?
Yes, great point. Thank you. So the first thing that we're doing is measuring volume. And there's a lot of different brands of carts out there that all they do is they measure the volume. So that will tell me how many calories you burn. I can do that when you're resting. I can do that when you're exercising. That will tell us your VO2 max at the maximal intensity that you can push yourself. And again, there's a lot of brands that do that, but there's other brands that go a little bit deeper. And not only do they have oxygen sensors and total flow sensors, but they can also measure the oxygen that is coming into the body and the carbon dioxide that is being exchanged as a byproduct. And once you understand that information, not only can I know how many calories your body is burning, but I can understand where your body is burning those calories from. Are you burning carbohydrate energy, or are you burning fat energy? Those two fuels produce a different amount of carbon dioxide that you can measure. And so once you can measure that, then you can tell people, not only are you burning, let's say 15 calories a minute by running at this speed, but 12 of those calories are coming from fat, or maybe only 4 of those calories are coming from fat. And that's going to produce vastly different results depending on what your goals are. But generally speaking, what we want to do is we want to teach people not only to burn a lot of calories, but we want people to burn most of their calories from fat across the board. Most people have too much fat. They want it gone. An endurance athlete and people that want to save their glucose energy because they can't store very much glucose, they can't store very much glycogen, that runs out for people. So that marathon runner that you mentioned, if they don't know any better and they don't train the right way and they don't fuel themselves properly, they are going to be burning mostly sugar, carbohydrate, and they will run out. And that's when people bonk, they hit the wall. That's why we need Gatorades and goos and all the sugary crap that I had to eat when I was cycling and trying to compete, because you're burning off a fuel that your body can't store very much of. And so my whole entry into low carbohydrate was really just seeing that, like, as we manipulated the diet, as we started to tell people that it was okay to eat fat and they could bring their carbohydrate energy from food down, we would notice their fat burning would increase. They would get better and better and better at metabolizing fat. They would lose fat way easier. They could last a lot longer doing whatever sports they were doing. And so that was really exciting and interesting. But it really wasn't until people started doing more like intermittent fasting. So once people started doing, more ketogenic style, low carbohydrate diets, it made it easier for people to do intermittent fasting. And the really interesting thing there is we would notice that the resting metabolic rate, the number of calories that people should have been burning when they start practicing intermittent fasting, that number would just go higher and higher and higher, like hundreds of calories higher. They would be burning just at rest. And it was so difficult to understand because the only thing we really knew at the time is that if you ate less calories than what you were burning, you would have that biggest loser effect where you'd crash your metabolism. Your metabolism would drop. How is it that these people are fasting? They are eating less calories. They're just eating them in a compressed window, but their metabolic rates are not crashing. They're not even staying the same. They're going up. And it was so fascinating to understand that once the body is in a state where it can start to burn stored fat energy, the fat that we all have already on our bodies, the body just says, wow, great. Like, we got access to tons of this energy that's already here. Here's pizzas and sandwiches and all kinds of stuff you ate years ago. Let's get this stuff out of here. And it increases the metabolic rate. And that really blew my mind. And that's what kind of brought me into this world.
That is so interesting. And I have 3 follow-up questions. I want to see if I can keep them straight. But first of all, you talked about high fat diets for endurance athletes. And you talked about yourself, you were a cyclist. Most endurance athletes have always been told for their entire lives, you need to carb load, you need to eat the goos, you need to have the Gatorades, you need to have these electrolytes, whatever else. How endurance athlete who's kind of either mid-season or training for something, going to run a marathon, how can they start to train their body to use more fats for fuel?
Great question. So that's kind of a 2-part question. And one's going to be nutrition related and the other one is going to be exercise related. On the exercise related side of things, we want people to really reduce their intensity and reduce their heart rate to work more in the heart rate zones that promote fat burning the most. A really easy formula that I tell people to use that, again, I validated on metabolic carts for years and years and years, was pretty much always right on, was using the Phil Maffetone method of calculating heart rate, which is basically 180 minus your age, keep your heart rate somewhere in that ballpark. For most people, that's really frustrating. It's usually a little slower, a little less intense than what they're used to. But those intensities help the body burn fat, not burn sugar. Once you start to get kind of huffing and puffing and breathing more and mouth breathing, that's a really good sign that your body is burning carbohydrates and not burning fat. So that would be one thing. The second thing is we saw amazing results when we help people transition off of carbohydrates and transition on to higher fat diets. And so really the best time to do that is an off season. It's not a great idea to try to do that if you've got an event coming up in a month or two, because as you well know, the body needs time to adapt to that kind of thing. And people notice in the short term that their performance will drop, which again, a little frustrating at first. But what you do by getting the carbohydrates out is you force the body to burn the fat energy that, again, we already have in the body. We can eat it in our diet, but we also store it very effectively on the body. Even if you're really lean, you have tens of thousands of fat calories on the body that can be used for energy, where most people really don't have any more than about 1,500 to 2,000 calories of glucose and glycogen in their body. And that's a finite resource that's going to run out. So if you can do those two things, if you can teach people to work out at the right intensity and you can change the diet, shift it towards proteins and fats and away from carbohydrates, the body will become way more efficient burning its calories from fat, which is amazing. People get really great results. You get people that are actually doing running events that lose weight or they don't gain a bunch of weight at the end of the event. We see that all the time. So yeah, it's really focusing on those two things.
What do you consider a low carb diet? Do you have like a general rule of thumb?
That's a great question. I generally think of it as probably less than about 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates in a day. I think that really depends on your goals and your activity level for determining like where you should be. Like if you're a type 2 diabetic who's like 400 pounds, you probably should be pretty strict. If you're already lean and you feel good eating carbohydrates and you're very active, I think you could be much more liberal and you could be probably close to 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. I don't think a lot of people need much more than that, but that's generally the range that I think of it in.
I think 100 grams or less is kind of my benchmark also. So
Cool.
We're on the same page here.
Cool.
Okay. So most of us don't have a metabolic cart at home. And I know there's devices out there like the Lumen and things like that claim that they can do that. You have a Lumen?
I do.
Nice. Okay. And how accurate do you find that to be compared to some of those bigger apparatuses?
Apparatuses. That's a great question.
Like, how do we do it at home, basically? How do we figure this out for ourselves and start making these changes? Because like what you're talking about is amazing. It sounds super dope. But like, I think a lot of people are like, okay, but how?
So another really great question. This technology that we have to measure this kind of stuff is out there, and there are devices that you can buy. I found over time that it was cool to like validate it and use those kinds of things, but it's not needed. And it doesn't really change the advice that I would give people. We're pretty much telling them the same kinds of things. You need to work out in a range that's promotes fat burning. You need to work out smarter, not harder. You need to make sure that you're strength training to maintain that metabolic rate as high as possible. And you should probably change your diet. You probably are eating an excessive amount of carbohydrates. You probably are not eating enough protein. And you're probably afraid of fat in the diet based on what everybody's been telling you. So it's been cool. Like now that we started our business, I don't have access to metabolic carts, but it doesn't really change my work with people and it doesn't really change my advice. Like if you are interested in fat loss, if you're interested in better endurance, if you're interested in burning fat as a fuel source, all the same rules pretty much apply. So you can do all of the same stuff at home. But for most people, I would really try to start with introducing more fat in the diet first. Try to get the carbohydrates down as low as you can tolerate. And then over time, you can decide how much fat you actually really need. For most people, they need more initially to kind of get into that fat burning state. And then over time, usually don't need nearly as much as they do in the very beginning.
You guys aren't watching the video, but I was watching Casey yanking on a lever. And I really like that analogy because it's like learn the rules of your body. And then you can figure out what levers to pull, what knobs to twist. And it becomes a much more of like an experimentation rather than this emotional state that we oftentimes attach fat loss to, where it's like, oh man, I hate how I look or whatever else. Well, now if we start experimenting and start being fascinated by potential results that we're getting, then it's a lot more of like how do we tweak this? Oh, I had this much fat. I didn't feel that great. Okay, well, maybe we should increase that. Oh, see how that feels. Oh, fascinating. And we have that outlook. I love that hand gesture because either you were doing that or you were trying to get a semi to honk. I can't tell which one.
Either one. No, that's so well explained. And I think fat is the biggest lever that we can pull as far as like getting different results. I think protein in the diet can be really stable and most people just need to hit that stable amount. Carbohydrates generally can be very, very low, but the fat is really something you can manipulate to get different results for people.
What kind of fats do you like? Because I feel like a lot of times people think fats, okay, that's avocado, that's peanut butter, and that's oil. Like what else will you include in your diet that are high quality fat sources that keep us away from like the seed oils and the high inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids and things like that?
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of plant fats, which I think are totally fine. I love fats that come from fruits. So the avocado, the olive, coconut, those are technically fruits. I didn't know
olive was a fruit. What a treat.
Weird, huh? Yeah, there you go. You can put it in your hand and you squeeze it and fat will like come out, right? Like you get fatty substance. And with seed oils, like you said, it's a highly, technical process that requires a lot of machining. You can't just take like a cotton seed and squeeze it and get a whole bunch of fat out of. That's an industrial fat, like you said, that we really want to avoid. Those plant fats are awesome. I do enjoy the oils that those come with. I think those are all fine for consumption, but I also really want people to understand the value of getting animal fats in their diet. So things like fatty cuts of meat, I think are great. I think cooking with bacon grease is great. I think using butter, one of my favorites, is great. And just understanding that the fat that comes in animal products is totally fine to include as well.
So you're trying to include a little bit less of like the nuts and like the plant fats and include a little bit more of the animal fats, the saturated fats, rather than the polyunsaturated fats. Is that about right?
That's about right. It also just really depends on where you're coming from and what your transition is like. You'll probably agree with me. In the beginning, like if somebody's coming off of a standard American diet and they say like, okay, I just replaced all my desserts with fat bombs and I'm eating almonds as a snack and I am including some of those other nuts and seeds and cashews, like I think that's fine. Go ahead and do that for a little while. But I think most people notice that if they continue to do those things, their weight loss and their fat loss is probably going to stall. Maybe it's because they're intaking an excessive amount of calories. Maybe it's because they are taking in too much fat when they want to burn the fat that's already there. And I think nuts are tricky for a lot of people. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I think for some people, the combination of fat and carbohydrates in nuts and seeds can be a little much. I really wonder about anti-nutrients in nuts and seeds, especially things like almonds and cashews that might have a lot of oxalate. I think people handle that differently. And so I think that's individual. But yeah, generally speaking, I try to get those out. If somebody's going to include them initially, I don't have a problem with it. But generally speaking, especially if somebody's on a stall, they're not getting the results they were expecting. Those are the ones I'm going to kind of focus on and say like, okay, let's probably bring these down. I know for me personally, like if I had a handful of almonds, dude, I'll have a handful of almonds and then I'll have a handful of almonds and then I'll have a handful of almonds. Like I can't stop. I don't get satiated the same way if I just have like, eggs or some lunch meat or something like that.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of times people think almonds equal healthy or nuts equal healthy. So I'm going to switch out my dessert for nuts or trail mix or whatever else and end up having more calories because they're really calorie dense foods. Fats come as 9 calories per gram versus 4 for carbs and proteins. So that's a really good point.
And now here is part 2 of my conversation with Nate Palmer.
And also, I wanted to dive into like what you're talking about with the oxalates, because I think that fits the kind of quote unquote carnivore narrative of why we should be avoiding more plant foods. Because, you hear a lot of times people talking about how plants don't have horns, they don't have teeth, they don't have tusks, so they can't defend themselves. So they have to use chemical warfare. Can you talk a bit about how you've gotten into more of that carnivore lifestyle and, what you've noticed personally or with your clients?
Yeah, sure. There's no other topic that makes me look like I'm growing a second head out of my shoulders than talking to people about plant chemicals like
you should not eat spinach. They're like, hold up, what?
Whoa, what? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I heard my first carnivore interview on Joe Rogan. It was the Sean Baker episode. I actually just this year went back and listened to the whole thing. I turned it off when I was listening to it. I was already in the low carbohydrate space when I heard it, but I thought the idea that somebody could just eat ribeyes that could be very healthy was absolutely foreign to me. I thought it was ridiculous that this doctor is like eating ribeyes and crushing deadlifts and rowing contests. Like, give me a break. Like, no chance. And I slowly came around to the idea. I tried my own 30-day experiment back in April of 2019, and I just really enjoyed it. I never really wanted to get off it. I felt a lot better physically. My energy adapted fairly quickly. And I could say the biggest surprise for me was my mental clarity and my connection to the planet. It's hard to explain, but it somehow changed. My gratitude increased. My ability to deal with stress was much better. I just appreciated things more. I would say that I was positive and optimistic before going carnivore, but when I switched and took out all the plant foods out of my diet, I felt a lot better mentally. And that for me was a good enough reason to kind of stay on it. I've had some times where I've gone off of carnivore and I've eaten other things. Sugar for me really goofs me up. Like I get anxiety like crazy if I have sugar. So that one for me is an easy one to just say like, I can go the rest of my life without having a high amount of sugar. Like that, it's not worth it for me to spend my life anxious. But even some plant foods, like even over Thanksgiving, I had potatoes and I had some stuffing. And dude, this is the weirdest thing. I don't know how else to explain it. My tooth, where I have a filling, always used to kind of low level like bug me. My tooth for like 36 hours was killing me after Thanksgiving by eating potatoes. And so again, I don't think most people need to get that nitpicky about their diet. I just noticed an effect. And the only thing that was different that day of what I consumed was potatoes, which have a high amount of oxalates. And it was really uncomfortable for quite a while. And so I just, I feel better without them. I do okay without plants. I do okay without really any amount of carbohydrates. I enjoy carnivore and feel really good when I do it. So that for me is enough motivation. But again, I don't feel like everybody has to have that same level of strictness if they don't want.
Yeah, that's fair. Because it is fairly restrictive, especially when you're saying like, yeah, obviously don't have processed standard American diet foods, but now we're cutting out fruits and vegetables and roots, some of the and the tubers. That's like, you're only going with one food group. So when I first heard about carnivore, I was like, hell no, miss me with that shit. We've been trying to get people to eat their vegetables for decades. Yep. And now you're telling them they don't have to. But I did an interview with Rob Wolf, who is just exceptional human being. And we talked to him about his documentary, The Sacred Cow. And he kind of was the one, he's not even a proponent of carnivore, but he was the one who kind of like pushed me towards exploring it a bit more. And I still have plant foods. I still will have rice, potatoes, things like that on a fairly regular basis. I eat a lot of fruits, but I've been switching over and just trying to eat a lot more meats as a part of my regular life, especially red meats. Because the way he explained it of cows being ruminants, having 4 stomachs, turning whether it's grain or grass or whatever else they've been fed into high quality, nutrient dense protein, and not really seeing a difference between like grain fed and grass fed cows in terms of overall nutrient density, completely rocked my paradigm around what was like a nutritious food. And previously I was like, you got to eat chicken, limit the red meat, because that's what we've been told for so long, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. And I wish people would make that their starting point and make that kind of their home base. Whatever they construct their diet with is totally fine. But I really do agree with you and believe that red meat, the fatty red meat, should be a foundation. Again, you can build on top of that, but make the red meat be the foundation. Make that the staple. Make complete animal foods be the thing that you start with. Garnish it with other things is totally fine. And I agree. I do chicken, I do eggs, I do all kinds of different meat in my diet, but I don't feel the same if I'm not eating red meat. And you're right. I believe that eating responsibly and eating locally and eating sustainably can be, what I did about a month and a half ago and bought like a quarter of a cow from a rancher. And that was great. But I also think eating responsibly and eating locally means you go to the discount meat section of your local store and buy meat from there. And that might not be the very best source, but I do believe that is doing your part. It's giving you good quality food, really debatable to know whether grass-fed, grass-finished, whatever is way better than what you can get at the store. And I think both of those things are totally acceptable and totally fine.
So the interesting thing to me about the Rob Wolf interview was that we spent a lot of time talking about, because he was a huge grass-fed, he was like the head of the grass-fed movement, paleo guy through and through, right? And when he did all this research, he brought all this research after looking at grass-fed cows versus grain-fed cows and was basically like, what's the difference? And he looked at it with his team and he's like, I'm not seeing much of a difference here. So he sent it to an independent researcher and was like, what's the difference? And he said, basically, the only thing that's different is that grass-fed cows have a higher omega-3 fatty acid ratio. And he's like, but that doesn't even matter because you're going to get more omega-3s from a 6-ounce serving of salmon than you are going to get from a 5 pounds of ground beef. So you're not even eating the beef for omega-3s anyways. And he's like, because they're so efficient, it doesn't really matter. And and the reason he went out and divulged this information, because he was like, I don't know, should we or should we not? He's like, I didn't want vegans to be able to look at my data and say, hey, big glaring hole, what else is wrong with what you said? Yeah. So he says no vegan takedowns or rebuttals to Sacred Cow, but all the pushbacks come from these grass-fed farmers who he's been talking about and promoting for years. And now he's saying, it's really not that big of a difference. So I thought that was just so interesting. And also fascinating to put your reputation on the line like that, to be like, I was a little bit wrong about what I said earlier. I think there's something amazing there, because I think no one apologizes and no one rescinds what they've said previously.
Yeah, no, I think that's savage. I think that's a wonderful point. And yeah, at the end of the day, this is a diet that shouldn't be cost prohibitive. It shouldn't price people out. And meat prices are getting more expensive, but for what you're getting and the quality you're getting, you could really pull off a very high quality diet for $10 a day. Buy whatever conventional eggs and a pound of ground beef, eat until you're totally satiated. That's a really good diet. And I think you could do that by shopping at your normal local grocery stores. Great.
I love that. And like yesterday, I went and got some ground beef. It was $2.97 a pound. I eat about 2 pounds of meat a day. Like I try to get about I think of a pound of lean meat is about 100 grams of protein. So I'll get 2 of those to get up to about 200 grams of protein, and then throw some eggs on top of that to round it out. And then after that, whatever I want to eat is fine. If I've eaten 2 pounds of meat and 7 eggs, like 250 grams of protein, and I want to eat a banana or some peanut butter or some potatoes, I don't stress about it.
Awesome.
And then also what I found with those, like the higher fat, higher meat oriented meals, is I can go way longer between meals. I'm not hungry at all. Yep. So I can kind of cut back to like, 1 or 2 meals per day without an issue, especially when I'm trying to cut or stay lean, or just like I got a lot to do at work and I'm not trying to go to the kitchen all the time and start cooking. I just think that there's something brilliant about the simplicity of this. And but I previously was so against it because I just didn't understand a lot of the nuance.
And that's what gets people. That's such a really good point. Like people want simple, but they expect complex. And so I'll ask people all the time, like when we're making your meal plan and deciding what things you want to eat, do you want it to be like more simple, or would you rather have a really complex plan? And everybody tells me the same thing. They're like, oh, it just has to be simple. I'm already busy. I'm already, got the kids and I can't do the meal preps. I don't want to shop for a bunch of hours. It's like, okay, well, let's just keep this real simple. Focus on getting animal fats and proteins, do ground beef, do eggs, cook it up, eat it until you're fully satiated. Don't limit yourself. And let's just keep it there. And people like kind of stop and they go, oh, okay. Well, what about this supplement? It's like, okay, well, you can do that supplement, but that's a little bit more complicated. You told me you wanted simple. What about
this sauce even,
What about this sauce? And should I do this sauce or that sauce or the side dish? It's like, those are things that are making it more complex for you. Decide how much of that you want. But if you want simple, you can start with just those basics and keep it there and you'll be fine.
PSA, a pound of ground beef and 3 eggs on top is a complete meal. You can eat that. Yeah.
Money. So good.
And people don't realize it's a great breakfast too. And I break the carnivore rule because I do hot sauce on everything, but I
do too.
I do too. I just can't get away from the oxalates. I just love them. I want to put them all over my body.
Yeah. You know what? And I do too. And whether that makes me 100% carnivore or not, like I don't really care. I do coffee in the morning with, the butter and the MCT and, I'm
telling Sean Baker.
He's going to take my carnivore card. Damn it.
But I also think that carnivore is kind of like, I feel like keto is a little bit nebulous. Carnivore is like, there's not a hard and fast rule. A lot of like the really strict proponents say meat, eggs, and that's it, and then some people say, well, yeah, you can have some dairy. Some people are like, well, you can add some fruits in there. Those are flowering bodies. You can get some of those occasionally. So it's kind of like, it's a little bit more like take this and make this your own rather than follow these really strict rules. It's not Whole30, right? Yeah. You're not doing 75 hard. You don't have to take a picture in front of the mirror every day to be a carnivore,
Yeah. I love that. I love the definition of carnivore as 75% of your calories or more are coming from animal foods. That gives you some wiggle room. You don't have to be crazy strict about it. And just like paleoarchaeologist Dr. Mickey Bendor, who we've interviewed a few times on our show, he talks about this all the time. Yes, we are omnivores. We can have plants. We can have animals. We can eat lots of things, but omnivores still specialize. They still get most of their calories from either plants or animals. That doesn't mean you have to be 100% carnivore all the time. You can still have plant foods, but it's just understanding that we still specialize as a species by eating animal foods. And so thinking about it as like, I want to make sure that at least 75% of my calories are coming from animal products. And I'm pretty sure I'm not having 20% of my calories from hot sauce with my eggs and my meat. I'm not going to get too
hot sauce, 0 calorie, bro. Come on. Don't bust roll hot sauce like that.
Green Tabasco, by the way, green Tabasco with hard-boiled eggs is so good. Hits the spot. Green
Tabasco. I've been on a big kick. I was on a Chipotle Tabasco kick for a little bit, but green is kind of where it's at. So I have the green, I have the Cholula, and like your bases are covered.
Dude, your bases are covered. You're good.
Also, egg yolks are a great sauce. You make the ground beef, you throw the eggs on top, you kind of like puncture the egg yolks. You are cooking with gas with that point.
Amazing. The richness, the savory, you hit all spots of it. It's great. So good.
It makes me sad for people who don't understand that like that's a healthy breakfast or a healthy dinner.
They're missing out. And they're going to be very, very hungry. Like you said, like if you want to be busy, if you want to be productive, if you want to kick ass, like you want to eat until you're very satiated and you want to be full for a really long time. That's what the fats and proteins do for you. You're missing out on that if you're eating cereal and, part of this complete breakfast with the orange juice and all that BS, like you're going to be very hungry all morning and you're going to have to take time and energy to eat again and again and again. And it sucks. It's taking away from what you want to do, which is have a great life.
And if you want to do more in life, you got to eat less because every time you eat and digest, you're aging yourself prematurely. You're pulling blood from your brain to your extremities to your gut, so you never have as much energy when you're trying to digest your food.
That's right.
Plus, the moral superiority that you can look someone in the eyes and be like, hey, listen, for every animal you don't eat, I'm going to eat 2, and one of them is going to be endangered. Like that, that in itself, it feels really good to say.
Amazing. That feels great.
I'm eating 1 koala. I'm having a koala burger tonight if you don't eat your animals.
Beautiful. I love that.
Man,
no,
so
go ahead. It's just funny. It's funny that like people think that, people on the carnivore diet are killing animals and they're causing destruction and death among the planet. And they don't realize that eating plants and growing plants in agriculture is extremely destructive. Way worse than, again, what I did buying a quarter of a cow from a rancher that doesn't live too far away from here. And that's food for months for me. Like, it's funny that the carnivores have that kind of stigma of like, you're the ones killing the animals. People just don't want to see that agriculture kills just as many, if not way more.
And I think, there's nothing wrong with like some of the ways like that, like Joel Salatin that like does his farming, and, some of these really regenerative farms have existed, or, even like farming at home and like having your own, like growing your own tomatoes and your own lettuce and things like that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But the way we do like the crops and like the FDA and stuff in the United States, where we go with this monocropping model, where we burn out all the soil. We haven't had a proper soil sample since 1944. So and like with kale, like kale sucks right now because, it used to be nutrient dense, but now people want it. So it's a hot food. So they farm the shit out of it. And now you can't get any nutrients from that either. So it's not even, I don't think it's so much about the GMOs. I don't mind GMOs really. It's about just the quality of our soil and how we're just not getting that much nutrition from it anyway. So I think when we're leaving off some of the current like farmed crops that we can buy at Safeway, Fry's, wherever else, it's not like you're losing out on a ton of vitamins or minerals, especially when you consider how nutrient dense red meat and organ meat can be.
Yeah, I love that. Rather than us trying to get whatever poor nutrition we can out of plants, let's run it through the animals, like you mentioned, the ruminant animals who have the capacity to turn grasses and other plants, digest them, turn them into short chain fatty acids, and create fat and protein that we can then eat that's really bioavailable to us. Let's run it through the animals.
You can't grill vegetables. You grill steak. People are going to be like, oh, you can grill an eggplant. No, you can't. Don't come into my house with an eggplant. You have to leave if you do that.
The asparagus just falls through the grates, man. Like it gets burned up in the bottom anyway. Like how do I do this?
Just skip that. Just go right to the ribeye. You're all right.
Exactly.
Dude, Casey, I feel like we're just on the same page about so many of these things. And I feel like our journeys have been very similar in terms of going from personal training. And then, now you're going from training to more of a nutrition-based approach, because I feel like we've seen that to get better results, we have to dial in the nutrition, then we can go to the training. But I wanted to kind of take it back to the training just for a second. And something you had said earlier about injury prevention. And I know you're doing a lot of stuff online right now. How do you keep your clients from getting injured with an online training model? What's your strategies there?
That's a great question. Thank you, pandemic, for helping us all be a little bit more creative and resourceful and do things that we wouldn't have really done before. The online people that I coach, I'm usually using a software program that gives them, workout programs that I can go through and customize based on whatever equipment they have. This is where I have a much higher value in things like machines than I used to. If somebody has access to a gym that has machines, I'm going to be a lot more confident that somebody could do a bench press on a cable machine and not get injured versus something with like free weights or a barbell or something like that. I would really want, some coaching as far as that goes. And I'd want to make sure that those people wouldn't get hurt. So I do place a high value in leveraging safe ways to move. And so I think machines are a great way to do that. Also using Zoom has been really helpful. Like, again, go back 3 years and ask me if you could coach somebody effectively by watching them through, a 5-inch screen on my phone. And I would have said, absolutely not. There's no way. And sure enough, like we've coached tons of people through Zoom, and we do all kinds of different classes, and we can watch people and we can correct their form and communicate with them as if they were in the same room as us. And so I think there's lots of different ways that you can do that, even down to doing things like movement assessments. So if you're familiar with an FMS, a functional movement screen, it's an in-person thing that you do, and you take people through different movements to assess how they're executing different movements. We do that virtually. Like, yeah, we don't have the best tools, and I'm not exactly measuring things, but I can observe you and watch you do different things and tell you, like, yeah, we need to be mindful of your shoulder, or your hips need some work, and we need to be mindful about what kind of, mobility work we give you and what kind of strength work we give you. And so, it takes a bit of creativity, but you can absolutely help people do safe and effective strength training for sure.
love what you said about machines. And that's one of my biggest changeovers is that when I first started, I was like, barbell or bust, baby. Machines for pussies. You can't do that. Like that. You're eliminating the stability. Well, like now I've learned that sometimes you want to eliminate stability and just focus on the primary movers, right?
Totally.
Which is a nice thing about like a chest press machine, like you were describing. You don't have to worry about like holding the bar or figuring out where your hand position is. You just press that bad boy out.
Yep.
So I think machines are great. I do a ton of stuff with dumbbells, and I love self-limiting exercises, things like squat to box, lunges where your knee touches like a pad or something like that. So we are really limiting the like available range of motion, and you know exactly if you're in the right position or not because you are touching, you're feeling that like tactile feedback. So yeah, I love where you're at.
Great point. I love that.
Anything else, Casey? I know we could talk to you for 5 more hours about training, fitness, and nutrition, but like, is there any like maybe one lesson that you've gotten from those 376 episodes of Boundless Body Radio that you're like, this has blown my mind. It's made a big difference for me and my clients, and something I want to share with the world?
That it's a great question, a very difficult one to answer. I would say the one thing that after doing all those episodes that I've really learned is, I hate to say it, but I have to say the plant-based movement is a scam. It is a scammy agenda that doesn't serve anybody. And pushing that movement forward and telling people it's the best thing that they can do for their health and for the health of the planet and the best thing that they could do ethically is absolutely bananas, in my opinion. I wish more people would know that and understand that. For all the people we've talked to, again, Nina Teicholz, Sean Baker, Jane Buxton wrote the book, The Plant-Based Con, and talking to her about how all of these agendas started, and Belinda Fettke and all her research about the Seventh-day Adventists and John Harvey Kellogg, and it's like pushing the Garden of Eden diet on somebody. People have no idea how much to this day, today in 2022, how much that agenda is pushed forward by people that literally believe that Jesus will come back when enough people eat a plant-based diet. And that might sound crazy, but it's absolutely not. And there's a lot of really good evidence out there. And I really think, there's some plant foods that are going to be benign for people and they're fine to enjoy. And there's some foods that I really believe can be actively harmful for people. And I wish people would understand that and come to the understanding that if nothing else, if they took your advice, what you said earlier in this episode, just mix in more animal products, have more red meat. Don't worry about eating the fat that comes on animal products. I think we would have a much different picture of health and a much better way forward for all of us moving forward. So that's, I suppose, would be the one thing.
That's awesome. I'm glad you said that because I would love to talk about John Harvey Kellogg. I would love to talk about the Seventh-day Adventists and their interactions with the FDA that we currently know in the food pyramid. We can talk about the scam that is the studies about red meat that have recently been rescinded. But I love that you said, hey, it's not ethically better. It's not better for the planet. It's not better for your health. And I think all of those things get just a pass because it's greens. It's healthy, obviously. And so that agenda, that movement gets this free pass because it sounds good on paper. And meanwhile, people who are pushing a little bit more like, hey, we should still be using animal products. It's not that bad. We have to have a 3-pronged answer to every little thing because it's always like, it's just obviously better for those 3 things.
That's right.
And you nailed them exactly the way I think about it as well. So
we just did an episode with a bunch of the stories that we've collected from former vegans, and they all had a very similar story to tell where it was like, yeah, that message, it checks all the boxes. It's so enticing. I'm helping my health. I'm helping the planet. I'm not killing anything. And it's amazing. It checks all the boxes, like I said, and it's not true.
Dude, yeah. And I really appreciate you bringing that up at the end of the episode. I would love to go another 90 minutes and just talk about those sorts of things. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 one of these days. Or
that
part
sounds
3.
Great. Anytime.
Or part 4, because I've been on Boundless Body now twice, right?
Yeah, you've been on twice. And like we've talked about when we've hosted you on our show, both of us get so excited. We talk so fast that hopefully people get 2 hours of content in less than that in this episode. So always a pleasure.
I thought we did a good job this time. I thought we were a little calmer.
Maybe a little, not much.
Maybe, not much. Casey, you're the best, man. Thank you so much for showing up. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Nate. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for listening. And if you found this episode valuable, there are 2 ways I can help you reach your goals for free, and one way that's very economical. The first, if you wanted to jump into the $1 Million Body Mastermind, get training, nutrition, and accountability, just go to nate.fit. See what that looks like. Right now, we're running a deal where you can get the first 2 weeks for just $1. Number 2, if you want to get a copy of the $1 Million Body Method, my handbook for carb backloading, including a 28-day plan for free, just go to getnatesbook.com. And number 3, if you like this episode and found it valuable, subscribe, leave us a review. That way we can keep bringing better and better guests and just make sure that this is a more valuable podcast for you to listen to. Hope you have an amazing day. I'll talk to you very soon.
So thank you again so much for listening to this bonus episode of my recent appearance on the Low Carb Hussle podcast. As we said in the introduction, go follow Nate on Instagram. Be sure to go over to Apple and leave the Low Carb Hussle podcast a rating and review. Be sure to follow his show so you can get the latest episodes. He does a really good job with his show. If you haven't already, be sure to leave us a rating and review. We really appreciate those on Apple, and that's a great way to get this message out to more people. And thank you very much, as always, for listening to Boundless Body Radio.